As a business and mindset coach for ELT and ESL freelancers, I talk a lot about mindset. But I sometimes wonder if everybody knows exactly what I mean by a good mindset. A good mindset is not at all the same thing as what is sometimes called toxic positivity. In this video, I'm going to explain the key differences and give you a 3-step system to help you build a better business mindset and through that, of course, a better business. My name's Rachel Roberts. I help ELT and ESL freelancers like you create successful freelance businesses so you can earn more, work less, and thrive. Negative emotions don't feel good. That's kind of the point, because we have negative emotions to warn us that something is not quite right or that something could be dangerous. But they feel bad, and so often there's a temptation to ignore them or to try to suppress them in some way. And this is when we come across things like, only positive vibes here. What a crock of rubbish. That's toxic positivity. It's toxic when we tell ourselves that we should always be positive, because the feelings don't go away just because we're denying they exist. Instead, they either build up over time under the surface and then come squirting out at a later date, or they cause us to make bad decisions because they're still working away in our subconscious. It's also toxic positivity when we tell people to cheer up, it might never happen, or turn that frown upside down, because that tells people that they won't be accepted unless they show the world nothing but positivity. On the other hand, toxic negativity can also be problematic. This is where we always expect the worst and we tend to see ourselves as the victim of circumstances beyond our control. I'm not talking about depression or a prolonged period of grief, which may be something that we all have to go through at times, but about a generally negative outlook on life, which can cause us to hold back from making decisions that would be good for us. It can lead to us subconsciously setting ourselves up for failure, because paradoxically, that's what feels more comfortable to us. So if we want to avoid both toxic positivity and toxic negativity, what's the middle ground? Firstly, I think we need to recognize that as business owners, things are likely to always be a little bit up and down. We're not always going to feel good. Things are not always going to go well. We may lose a client or be criticized publicly on social media or have a failed launch. When we feel bad, we need to acknowledge that and look after ourselves as tenderly as we can. We can see our negative emotions as a sign that we need love, self-love especially. And when we truly listen to our negative emotions, they quite often dissipate. They just needed to be heard. However, listening to our emotions is not the same thing as identifying with them. And this is where developing a good mindset comes in. Basically, the mind absolutely loves to interpret things and to make stories up about them. This is how we learn to understand the world. But the problem is that we quite often get these things wrong and misinterpret what's happening, particularly when our fight, flight, freeze system kicks in. Let's say you post about your offer and no one responds or comments. That triggers anxiety, and then your brain immediately starts to offer explanations and stories about what might have happened. Maybe you think you've priced your offer way too high, or maybe you think it's because you're not experienced enough, or maybe you think it's because there's too much competition. And so before you know it, you've decided that you'd better go back to offering your services on a platform like Preply and accept that you're never going to earn more than 20 euros an hour. Everyone gets these kinds of reactions to a trigger. That's just how our minds work. And however good your mindset is, those kinds of thoughts are probably going to pop in there first, because they're super quick and reactive. Developing a good mindset is about what happens after those initial thoughts. And that's where mindset coaching can really help. The trick is to get really good at noticing those initial thoughts and not suppressing them or pretending that we haven't thought them or felt them, because that's toxic positivity, remember. Equally, not wallowing in them and getting really involved in feeling as bad as we possibly can. because that's toxic negativity. So what do we do then? We try to step back and observe those thoughts and feelings in almost a scientific kind of way. Once we step back like that, we're settling into our right minds, not our frightened amygdala fight-flight minds, but our logical, conscious minds. And then we can start to question some of those stories. What evidence is there that people didn't respond to that post because our prices were too high? Can you actually find any? What else could have been the reason? Maybe it was because we hadn't posted for a long time and the algorithm had kind of fallen out of love with us. Or maybe we actually only have a teeny tiny audience, and so 2 to 5% of those would have seen it, and that's only a handful of people, and they just didn't happen to be the right people for that offer. Or maybe we didn't use a CTA or a call to action that actually encouraged people to take action on that post. So they noticed it and maybe thought it was interesting, but didn't go as far as actually taking the next step. Once we have these possibilities, then we can start to experiment with how we could change those situations. We can start posting more often and see what difference that makes when we post an offer. We can take positive steps to build our audience. We can improve the CTAs on our next post. And with each of these, we can watch and see what's happened, whether it's an improvement, again, in that curious scientific kind of way. Whereas if we stay stuck in pretending that everything is absolutely amazing, or that everything is awful and hopeless and we may as well give up, then we won't take any of those steps and things actually won't be able to improve. So that's why mindset is so important to you as an ELT or ESL freelancer. Once we start to tell ourselves stories about how this always happens to me, or there's something wrong with me, or things will always be like this, then we're moving away from a healthy processing of emotion into creating more pain for ourselves. If you'd like some help with your mindset and your business strategies, I'm here to help. Join my membership for ELT freelancers, the Confident ELT Freelancer Collective. Or if you know you're ready for a deep dive into your business, check out my group program, Flourishing Foundations. You can find out about both of these in the description of this video. In the next video coming up on your screen, I'm going to be talking about strategic mindset, which is the number one quality I believe you need to develop to become a successful ELT or ESL freelancer.